1992, and I show up in New York City at LaGuardia Airport. And I've got a taxi, and I'm heading to Trump Towers to meet with Vice President Andy Weiss. Andy is the VP on the 29th floor, and I'm a little nervous, as I am here today. I'm a little nervous about going up to the 29th floor and visiting with Andy about this big project that I have in my mind. I'm hoping to create a piece of work on Trump's property. And the land is on the west side of Manhattan Island on the Hudson River. And so I walk in, and Andy is pretty familiar and pretty nice to me. And so after 30 minutes, he says, "So, Mr. Hurd, how much money would you like from Mr. Trump for this project?" And I said, honestly, I just want the land. I'm not after money. And he was visibly shocked. And he said, "Hang on a minute." And he left, and 10 minutes later, he came back and he said, "Mr. Hurd, you have the site." So 9 months later, with this sketch in mind, this is a Thomas Hart Benton painting. Thomas Hart Benton was a Missouri artist who had a love-hate relationship with the New York art scene. He was a Midwesterner. He was a representational artist. His student, Jackson Pollock, was the leader of abstract expressionism, and people were kind of looking down their nose at representational art. So here I am, a Kansas farm boy, headed to New York to create an image on the biggest land that I could ever find as far as eyeballs. As you see here, 9 months later, this image on 1 acre, so this is one football field in size, it comes to life right at winter. We bring flowers in, we bring plants in, and this image is my journey from western Kansas, a small farm town, to New York City. But I didn't do it alone. So I want you to meet John, the guy on the left, a Midwesterner. He was, I guess you would say, a struggling actor. A lone wolf, the gentleman standing with the cap on, was an NYU graduate, a Vietnam veteran, had struggled a lot with depression. Very interesting guy. Claims he knew Pierre Trudeau. I presume maybe that's true. I don't know. He could introduce me. Ryan, the next guy, standing beside me, the guy with the bald head, Ryan was a California graffiti artist. And really what happened to me was I went to New York thinking that this was about me. This was going to be my opportunity to become known as an artist. But what really happened was these guys changed me and made me see that the work that I was doing and that the potential for my work was about others. So here's a little shot. You can see the spot off to the left. That's a close-up of this image. The image was created with kale, and we actually planted vegetables on the property, and the guys helped their friends to tomatoes and squash and cucumbers. We got squash recipes. So I spent 9 months with these guys. I spent 9 months with homeless guys, and you can see on the right, that's the image, 1 acre, floating on Manhattan Island. And the experience taught me so much about New York. I had no idea about how people lived up there. And here we are with these guys in the mornings having breakfast from food trucks, and then at noon, I'm off to go visit my friend Andy Weiss at Trump Towers. It's this juxtaposition between the lowest and the highest, or however you would say that, the people that are living in the extremes in New York. I spent 9 months doing that, and it was an amazing journey. So they actually made a movie about this, and the movie is Earthwork. You see John Hawkes, maybe you recognize him. He was an actor who was won awards or was established to win awards for Winter's Bone. He's a very cool guy. We hung out. This movie, Earthwork, which I think is a pretty good movie, even though it's about me, it kind of takes me back to the beginning, as does the story of my artwork, the story of my earthworks, the story of how I began all of this, the genesis of how this came to me. I was aware of the fact that there ancient images on the ground that people from indigenous cultures have been creating designs on the earth forever. The White Horse of Uffington, Stonehenge, Cerros Unidas that you see on the left here was a 600-foot tall figure in Chile. I also researched, and by the way, folks, we didn't have Wikipedia back in these days. So I had to go to a library to look at this stuff. So when I discovered the Earthworks artists, and I knew some because I'm an art history, not major, but student, I knew about Smithson and Walter Di Maria and Heiser and Nancy Holt, and people that were doing these non-representational images in the ground, very powerful things. But when I saw Christo's running fence and realized that the effort to create the work, that bringing people into the large monumental earthworks and artworks was about connecting people to something that changed their lives. It's not the final photograph. It's the 2 years it took Christo to do this piece. I had set about at the time to find the land for my first image. And the first image that I chose in southwest Kansas, near my hometown of Protection, Kansas, a little farm town, was Satanta. Satanta was a Kiowa Indian chief. He was a war chief. The Kiowa people actually rode within miles of where I grew up. I found that out later in life, that the Bluff Creek that ran past my parents' home was right there. And to show you this, to give you a little insight, this is a grid. The grid shows the one inch squares. 1 inch squares equal 40 foot on the field. So I would take a crew and a transit, and we would head to the field and lay this image out. 3 weeks later, I had plowed this out. And I want you to understand that size matters. So this is 160 acres. A football field is 1 acre. This is 160 football fields in size. It's carved subtractively out of stubble. You can see up on the right, there's the farmstead. And then down at the bottom, there's a small tractor that shows the scale of the piece. So I set about in the world to make my name. And I began to meet people. I met the Kiowa. I started a relationship with Native American people, ending up in Lawrence, Kansas, and working with Haskell Indian Nations University. Saginaw Grant portrait was a gentleman who danced at the Haskell Indian Nations powwow, and I got his permission to do his work, and I've been working ever since. But what happened at this point was I realized I needed eyes on my work. If I was going to survive as an artist in Kansas, in the Midwest, I needed to get people to look at my work. I needed to get people to see my work. I needed a patron. I needed to make a living. I had a family. I had a child. I had to figure out how to make a living at this. So this takes us back to New York City and Ryan. So the amazing thing about this young man that was so fascinating to me is, I came on this property on the Hudson River. And it was just all about me, I'm going to do this. I'm the artist from Kansas. I'll show these New Yorkers that, we people in Kansas actually know what's going on. What I came away from it with was what Ryan taught me. And, these guys, this guy's life changed right in front of me. And he had been disenfranchised from his family. And Ryan and Lone Wolf and John, were I don't know, I just, I didn't really get them early, but later I finally recognized that what was happening is it was changing them. And that was the power of my art. So I actually ended up going to Trump Towers at the end of the project. And I met with Mr. Trump. And I walked into his office at the end. I didn't try to meet him. I loved his vice presidents. They were wonderful people. They treated me with great respect. But I walked in, and the first thing he said was, "Stan, tell me about the homeless people." And I said, "Well, Mr. Trump, they're a lot like you. They get up in the morning and do anything they want. Nobody tells them what to do. And they really are kind of fascinated by their freedom to move about the planet, And he laughed. So I turned back and I head back to Kansas, and I head back to a few years of creating images, and I get into the Young Woman series. The Young Woman series is La Niña y el Viento, the little girl in the wind. This is a portrait of Carol. I go on to go to Brazil. I've spent 6 years off and on in Brazil, trying to get a piece down there, and that's still probably going to happen. This was a prototype of that image. So I'm creating images of young indigenous women in their ancestral homelands. This is a 2-acre piece, 2 years in Yunnan, China. I created this work on 4 acres with the help of Chinese people. It was an amazing experience. And getting to the end of this, what do I do next? Where are we going with this? So I've set about to create the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is known in nature as this incredible pattern that connects science and nature at a time when a lot of people even question whether science has validity. So I want to create this piece in China, and I intend to do it, and I've already talked to him in Shanghai, in the United States, and possibly even in Qatar. Sam was just talking about Qatar. So there's Qatar. People in Qatar cannot go on their Hajj. They can't go on their religious trek because they're not allowed into Saudi Arabia right now. So a young Qatari fellow said, could you connect the Fibonacci to Qatar? And so to Mecca. So you see the design. These images would splay out, and they would connect around the world and would be markable, traceable, trackable. That's what I'm set about right now. Really quickly, we end with New York. I have one quick story to tell you. My son at 18, I tell him, I'm taking you to New York. We're going to go visit the site where the piece was. We go to New York on his 18th birthday. We land. We're walking through the 72nd Street, and there's nobody on the street. I mean nobody except for one figure. 16 years, and it's Ryan. I don't know how that happens in a city with that many million people, but I ran across this guy 16 years later by pure happenstance with my son. And he stopped and told me that this project changed his life. And that changed my life. So I'm set about in the world right now to try to continue this journey of making art for both the big picture, Fibonacci, and the little picture, one human heart. Thank you.